Hi, happy Friday. I was trying to decide. Well, first of all, it's my new first video blog, so yay! Because I've been wanting to start it for the longest time, as so many people know, and I'm really excited to have my first episode up. And I hope you like it. I was praying over what my first episode should be, what I would discuss in it, and the Lord put in my heart to discuss purity, but specifically mental purity, because I think that so many of us, when it comes to purity, we think that if we're keeping ourselves physically pure and we're putting up physical boundaries, that we're doing a pretty good job. And I think that that's what separates, in my mind, Christians and then disciples or followers of Jesus. Christians, they'll go through the motions, they'll do the actions, right? They'll go to church, they'll keep themselves physically pure. I mean, at least technically, but they're not really focused on going above and beyond. They're not focused on actually dying to self and being set apart for Jesus. And I think that, that's what separates a Christian from a disciple to me, is a disciple still lives by those Christian values inside. They live by them when no one's watching. They live by them when they know that no one but Jesus will know, is the thing. They live by those values, regardless of whether or not, when they're home alone, they live by them. They're not compromising. And so many of us really compromise when it comes to mental purity. We only focus on the physical purity, and then we just forget about how we're supposed to be pure mentally as well. And so I want to discuss that today, actually. Someone called me. So I'm going to start with the Bible verse. So this is in the Gospel of Matthew, book 5, chapter 5, and then verse 27 to 28. You have heard that it was said, "You shall not commit adultery." But I say to you that everyone who looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed adultery with her in his heart. And I really love that verse, and it's so important. First of all, Jesus is not saying that if you even look at a person of the opposite gender who you find attractive, that you're committing adultery. That's not what he's saying at all. But what he is saying is that in your walk with him, in your walk with God, in your life, in your Christian life, your thoughts matter. What's on your heart matter. It's not just about the actions. It's not just about the physical. What's in your heart and what's on your mind, they matter. They really do. And he's also saying with lustful intent. And it's just so important for us to be mindful of our thoughts and what's on our heart. Too many Christians have made it an acceptable habit to regularly lust and to regularly dwell in lustful and impure thoughts. And they justify it by saying, "Oh, I'm not hurting anyone. They're just my thoughts. I'm not acting on them." But, Jesus knows what's on your heart, and he knows what's on your mind. And you're hurting yourself. You're hurting the Holy Spirit within you. And you're also hurting, those around you. You're hurting your spouse if you're married. And if you're not married, you're hurting your future spouse. And here's why. I think that single Christians, they give themselves so much leeway, so much freedom with what they consider to be acceptable behavior for them to indulge in, for what they allow themselves to do. And lots of them will make the justification of, well, I'm not married. I'll stop when I'm married. I'm not hurting anyone. It's not being unfaithful or disrespectful to my spouse to lust if I'm not married. But so many single Christians who use that excuse soon find when they're married that their lusting, it doesn't go away. They've created a habit. They've created a habit of looking at other people with lustful intent and dwelling in those fantasies. And they can't just, turn it off right as soon as they walk down the aisle. It doesn't work like that. They've made a habit, they've made it just their mental lifestyle. They've just not practiced throughout their single years disciplining their minds against lustful thoughts and impure thoughts. And then married people, lots of you say, oh, well, it's not harming anyone because it's not harming my spouse because I'm not acting on these thoughts. I'm not committing adultery. I'm staying physically faithful. And I guess that's true that you're staying physically faithful, but your thoughts and the lust that you allow yourself to take part in and indulge in your mind, those things do hurt your relationship with your spouse because you're creating a culture of comparison. Like not culture, but a habit of comparison, because when you lust, that you're comparing your spouse to the other person, and you're not creating a marriage where they're completely 100% enough for you, where they're all you need to satisfy your cravings and your desires. You're not going to be able to go to them to fulfill every single craving of your heart because you're creating fantasies about people who are different than your spouse. And how can your spouse meet fantasies that aren't about them and that aren't related to them? You're creating, how can they meet those desires when those desires aren't for them? Those are lustful desires about someone else or a different scenario. It's actually really unfair as well to create that, to bring comparison and introduce it into your relationship, into your home. And it's unfair to them because you're setting up a situation where they're not enough for you, is the thing. And that's why it's really important to actually take into consideration the thoughts we have and to recognize that purity is not just physical, it's mental, it's what's on the heart, because those things do matter. Those things can dampen your relationship and your union. Those things can create a bad habit that will really hinder intimacy and trust with your spouse. Continually lusting as well and allow yourself to indulge in that, it also hurts yourself. It takes your mind away from God and it hurts the Holy Spirit residing within you. Another verse that I want to look at is Philippians chapter 4, verse 8. And it says, finally, brothers, whatever is honorable, whatever is true, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. As children of God, we're supposed to look at the big picture. It's not just about the action, It's not just about the thought. It's about, it's not about the heart, just the heart. It's about everything together. We have to look at the big picture. And as children of God, we need to focus on the pure things, on the lovely things, on the holy things, on the virtuous things. And that's how we can really take our walk seriously and not hinder ourselves in our fellowshipping with our brothers and sisters, in our fellowshipping with our spouse, whether or not we've met them yet, and in our fellowshipping with God. So that's all that I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this first installment and episode. If you liked it, leave a comment below and tell me what you think. And until next time, bye, TGIF.